The two suns of Draemoth Prime were setting behind the crystal spires, making the sky look purple and gold. Empress Velara sat all alone in her wheelchair inside the huge palace, watching the colors fade through the Hall of Eternal Flame's tall windows. Today is the 847th anniversary of this event, the day she got her name. The one day that was meant to be hers and hers alone. But no one remembered, just like they hadn't in the last 100 years. No one cared. Over the years, Velara's silver scales, which used to be so bright that they could blind anyone who looked at her directly, had turned a soft gray. Her wings, which used to carry her across whole star systems, now hung uselessly behind her chair. They were just dead weight now, memories of who she used to be. What she could never be again. 300 years ago, during the Void Swarm invasion, she became paralyzed. She had put herself between an enemy weapon and her homeworld, which would have split the planet in half. That day she saved billions of lives. She could never stand up again, fly again, or be anything more than a ruler stuck in a chair. All of her council members were at the Galactic Summit on the other side of the sector. Her military leaders were stationed at far-off border outposts, watching for threats that might never come. The few people who saw her every day, her attendants, treated her like a fragile piece of ancient pottery that might break if they breathed too hard near her. They had left an hour ago. Their sad looks were worse than being alone. The palace, which was built to hold thousands of people during the Dragon Empire's glory days, felt like a grave. Every step made a noise. Even though there were ceremonial braziers with eternal flames in the halls, every room was too big, too empty, and too cold. Velara sat in the dark, listening to the silence and thinking about when her life had changed into this. When did she stop being a person and become just a sign? Just a name? Only the Empress, who no one really knew anymore. She was about to call for her evening medicine when a loud alarm broke the silence. The palace security system, which is usually quiet, suddenly came to life with warnings and flashing lights. There was an unauthorized vessel. Bay 3 for landing. Engaging defensive protocols. At first, Velara was annoyed. Maybe a pilot who lost some cargo and typed in the wrong coordinates. People didn't think it happened that often. But then she couldn't help but be curious. She was bored, really bored, and even a security incident was more interesting than staring at walls for another night. She used her neural link to get to the security feeds, and the palace's cameras showed her exactly what set off the alarm. A bad human cargo hauler. The ship looked like it had been through a war, then a trash compactor, and then maybe another war just to be safe. There were no panels. The hull was covered in scorch marks. Coolant was leaking from the bottom of the car, hissing and steaming as it hit the landing platform. The cargo ramp went down and one person fell out. He was tall but hunched over, clearly in pain, and his coveralls were so stained with grease and oil that she couldn't tell what color they had been when they were new. He was limping badly and favoring his right leg. He also kept talking into a communicator unit that was clearly broken. Station Control, this is Hauler 47 asking for emergency maintenance access. My main coolant line just broke, and I have about 10 minutes before my reactor goes critical. Please answer. Anyone? She noticed that the person had a toolkit hanging from one shoulder that looked almost as worn out as his ship. He had a new burn on his left hand that he kept trying to ignore, and his face was covered in soot. The palace AI was already sending out defense drones to get rid of the intruder by force. The usual way to do things. No one could get into an imperial palace without permission, especially not people on dying cargo ships. But Velara stopped the protocol with just a thought. She had no idea why. It could have been the loneliness that made them say that. It could have been because today was her birthday and nothing else had happened. Maybe it was because the broken ship and its struggling pilot reminded her of herself. Both broken. Both are barely holding on. Even though everyone told them to give up, they were still trying to move forward. The person stumbled toward what he thought was a service entrance, still talking to his dead communicator. He had no idea that he had just arrived at the safest place in 3-star systems. He didn't know that the building he was walking toward was home to the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. He had no idea that the ruler was watching him through a dozen cameras. For the first time in months he felt something other than crushing boredom. Velara made up her mind. Most likely a dumb one. Definitely against about 50 different security rules. But it was her birthday and she was sick of being careful, sick of being managed, and sick of being kept safe from everything, even things that were even a little bit interesting. She completely disabled the security system and turned on the entrance portal herself. The huge door, which was 30 feet tall and made of solid obsidian with crystal veins running through it, started to slide open with a loud grinding noise. The person froze and looked up at it with wide eyes, probably for the first time realizing that he had made a big mistake about where he had landed. Velara saw him hesitate and even take a step back toward his sinking ship. Then she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She spoke directly into the palace's outside speakers, and her voice echoed across the landing platform. Your ship is going to die. You are hurt. Come inside before both problems get worse. The person stood there, clearly scared, confused, and desperate enough that even a creepy invitation from a strange palace was better than watching his ship blow up with him on it. He moved forward. Then one more. Something strange was going on in Velara's chest. She hadn't felt that way in so long that she almost didn't know what it was. Excitement. Something unexpected was about to happen for the first time in years. Someone who didn't know her, didn't care about her, and wasn't in charge of her was about to come through her door. She had no idea that this random mechanic with a broken ship and bad luck was going to become the most important person in her long life. Tyler Hayes stumbled through the huge obsidian door. His boots echoed on the polished floors, which looked like they cost more than his whole ship. The hallway in front of him seemed impossibly long, with floating flames lining the walls that burned without any visible fuel source. The walls were made of smooth black stone with veins of something that glowed softly in the dark. This was definitely not a place where the public could get repairs done. Hey! His voice echoed off the walls, making him sound small and lost. Station AI? I'm very sorry about the landing that wasn't allowed. 3 jumps ago, my navigation system stopped working, and I was flying on emergency reserves. I'll be out of your way as soon as I fix my coolant line. Nothing. The only sounds were the soft crackling of the flames and his own rough breathing. Tyler's leg hurt a lot. The burn from the coolant went deeper than he thought, and his makeshift bandage was already soaked through. He needed to see a doctor, but even more importantly, he needed to fix his ship before the reactor melted down and turned the whole landing bay into a hole. He was about to turn around and admit that he had made a huge mistake and probably ended up on a billionaire's private estate when he heard that voice again. Not through speakers this time, but echoing through the halls themselves. It was old, melodic, and definitely not human. You are hurt. Come forward. The Hall of Eternal Flame is right in front of you. Tyler's mouth got dry. He had never heard an AI voice like that before. It sounded like it was alive, smart, and way too interested in him for comfort. But his leg hurt, his ship was sinking, and going back now seemed even dumber than going forward. He limped down the hall, one hand trailing along the wall for support. He left smudges of blood and grease on the stone, which was way too expensive. The hallway led to a room so big that it made his head spin. The Hall of Eternal Flame was what it said it was. There were dozens of fires burning all over the place, floating in the air and casting moving shadows on walls that were so high he couldn't see the ceiling. The floor was so shiny that it looked like he was walking through an ocean of fire. The Dragon Empress sat on a raised platform at the end of the hall. Tyler's brain just stopped working for a few seconds. He had seen dragons before. You would run into a few if you tried to move cargo across the galaxy. But he'd never seen one like this before. Even when she was sitting down, she was huge, easily 20 feet long from nose to tail. Her scales caught the firelight and reflected it in silver and pearl colors. Her wings were folded against her back, and her eyes, which were golden, old, and burning with an intelligence that made him feel like an insect under a microscope, were only on him. She was in a wheelchair. It was clear that this was not like any wheelchair Tyler had ever seen. This thing was a work of art, with flowing curves, anti-gravity repulsors, and what looked like real platinum inlay. But it was still a wheelchair and she was still sitting in it. Tyler's mechanic brain immediately picked up on the uneven hum of systems that were failing. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know this was happening. My ship was dying, I landed blind, the navigation system was broken, and I just needed a place to land before my reactor went critical and... When she raised one clawed hand, Tyler's mouth shut like someone had flipped a switch. You are bleeding, she said simply, and her voice was softer, almost kind, without the hall's acoustics. Go through the door on your left to get to the medical station. It will deal with how the body works. Wash your wound and come back here. Tyler looked at her. He had just crashed into an imperial palace and probably committed about 17 different crimes. Why was she worried about his leg? He looked at the door she had pointed out, then back at her, trying to figure out if this was a test or a trap. Go, she said, and this time her voice had a hint of authority. I didn't let you in to see you bleed on my floor. That made him move. Tyler limped to the medical station, which was a small room with equipment he only half recognized. But the scanner was easy to see, and when he put his leg under it, the systems took over. He felt like he was getting stabbed with antiseptic spray, warm and tingly diagnostic beams, and then a bandage that seemed to wrap around his calf and start pumping some kind of healing gel into the wound right away. 5 minutes later, the pain went from being very bad to just being annoying. Tyler couldn't believe what he saw when he looked at his leg. He should have been limping for weeks because of that burn. The dragons had access to technology that was light years ahead of what most people used for medical care. When he got back to the Hall of Eternal Flame, the Empress was still sitting in the same spot, staring at the door like she knew exactly when he would come out. Tyler stood there awkwardly with his toolkit still hanging from his shoulder. He wasn't sure how to talk to an Empress. Do you bow? Get down on your knees? Say hello? He stood up straight and tried not to look as scared as he felt. But his mechanic's ear wouldn't let it go. That noise. The wheelchair's repulsor system was working too hard, getting too hot and fixing an imbalance. He had heard that sound 1,000 times on ships that were about to sink. It was the sound of a system that had been patched and patched again but never really fixed, slowly killing itself. The words came out before he could think about them. Your chair. When was the last time someone really worked on it? I mean really serviced it, not just patched it. The Empress blinked. Those golden eyes got a little bigger, and Tyler realized with horror that he had just insulted the personal gear of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He was going to say he was sorry, change his mind, or maybe just run to his ship and hope the reactor killed him before her guards did. But she didn't seem mad. She seemed shocked. Really totally shocked. My attendants keep it up, she said slowly, as if she had never thought about the question before. Yes, but they're not fixing it, Tyler said, making the problem worse. They're just keeping it going. I can hear it from here. That noise? That's your stabilizers making up for repulsor coils that are worn out. The whole system is only working at about 60% of its full potential. My cargo hauler has better balance than that chair. The silence that came after was very scary. Tyler saw the Empress's face change as she went through a range of emotions that he couldn't quite read. What a surprise. Confusion. Something that could have been hurt. I could fix it, he said, not being able to stop himself. Well, if you wanted to. While I fix my ship. I've put together repulsor systems 100 times. It's just coils and the flow of power. In a few days I could have it running like new. He didn't know what he was giving. It could be because he had just gotten the best free medical care of his life. Maybe it was because she let him into her palace instead of shooting him down. Perhaps it was because the way she sat in that broken chair, all by herself in that huge empty hall, made him think of himself. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that the Empress was seeing right through him, reading everything he'd ever done, thought, or felt. She looked at him for a long time. At last she spoke, and her voice was soft and almost weak. What's your name? Not the name of your ship or your rank. Your name. Tyler, he said. Tyler Hayes. Her face changed in some way. Something got softer. Velara is what you can call me, she said. Not here. Not tonight. Just Velara. Tyler was standing there with his toolkit, staring at a dragon empress who had just given him her name. He had no idea what to say. So, Velara said, and there was a very small hint of something in her voice that could have been hope. You will stay. Long enough to fix both machines? Tyler thought about how his ship was going to die. His empty cargo space. He had nowhere else to go. And this dragon was sitting alone in an empty palace in a wheelchair that no one had bothered to fix. Yes, he said. Sure, I'll stay. They didn't know it yet, but that one word had just changed everything. The morning sun shone through the palace windows in beams of golden light that made the whole place look like it was from a dream. Tyler had spent the night in guest rooms that were bigger than most of the apartments he'd lived in. He lay awake on a bed that was so comfortable it felt wrong, staring at a ceiling painted with constellations he didn't know. He couldn't sleep and was up before dawn, already going through diagnostics and repair sequences in his head. The palace AI had sent him to the service bay, where his ship looked even worse in good light. But that wasn't what made him worried. Tyler spent 3 hours running every test he could think of on Velara's wheelchair. What he found made his stomach turn. The damage was worse than bad. It was a disaster. Quick fixes on top of quick fixes for hundreds of years, safety protocols turned off to hide warning signals, and backup systems that were also failing holding together primary systems. Whoever had been taking care of this thing had been putting band-aids on a broken spine and hoping no one would notice. The worst part? The main repulsor assembly was starting to crack under stress. The whole thing would probably break down in 6 months, 8 if she was lucky. Just stop doing your job. If Velara was in it when that happened and was moving quickly, the fall alone could kill her. Tyler sat on the floor of the workshop with a diagnostic pad in his lap, looking at numbers that made him feel sick. Someone should have noticed this a long time ago. Someone should have told her. But they hadn't, so now he had to. He found Velara exactly where he had left her the night before, in the Hall of Eternal Flame, sitting with a floating display that showed what looked like treaty documents in a language Tyler couldn't read. When he walked in, she looked up, and something about his face made her stop looking at the display right away. "What did you find?" Tyler took a deep breath. "Your chair is worse than I thought. Much worse. The housing of the main repulsor assembly is starting to crack. The backup systems are working at 130% of their normal capacity to make up for it. Your safety governors are off, probably so you don't get constant warning alerts." He pulled up the diagnostic data on his tablet and turned it so she could see the bright red parts of the schematic. "You have about 6 months before everything goes wrong. Perhaps 8. When it goes, it's going to go hard. No warnings, no slow decline, just a full shutdown of the system." Velara stared at the screen, and Tyler saw her face change from blank to something that looked almost like betrayal. "They never told me," she said in a voice so low he could barely hear it. "All this time. Reports on maintenance for years. Guarantees that everything was working as it should. And they never told me." Tyler wanted to defend whoever had been doing the maintenance and say that they might not have known, but he had seen the diagnostic logs. They were aware. They had known for years but kept it a secret because they were afraid to tell an Empress bad news. Tyler said quickly, "I can fix it. Rebuild the whole system from the ground up. New repulsors, new ways to route power, and the right safety rules. But I need some parts. I don't have it, and it will take time. More time than my supplies will last." Velara was quiet for a long time, staring at the diagnostic screen as if it had hurt her feelings. After that, she moved one clawed hand, and her own holographic interface showed up in the space between them. She typed in commands faster than Tyler could keep up, getting into systems he didn't even know existed. She said in a flat voice, "Parts will be delivered within the hour. Override Imperial priority." As for time. She looked straight at him, and those golden eyes were full of something Tyler couldn't quite understand. "Stay. Until it is done. No matter how long it takes." It wasn't a demand. It wasn't really an order, though. It was something in between, like a plea that she was too proud to actually make. Tyler said, "Okay. Yes, I'm going to stay." The first week went in a way that neither of them had expected. Tyler worked in the service bay in the early morning, running tests on his own ship, fixing broken circuits, and patching up holes in the hull. But he spent most of his time on Valera's wheelchair, carefully taking apart systems that hadn't been serviced in decades. The parts came as promised. Imperial courier ships dropping off parts that probably cost more than Tyler's ship was worth, like they were picking up groceries. High-quality repulsor coils, military-grade power lines, and safety systems that were meant for spaceships, not wheelchairs. Velara ran her empire from the Hall of Eternal Flame, where she dealt with 1,000 problems from 100 different worlds. But Tyler saw that she kept coming up with excuses to go to the workshop. At first, it was to see how things were going. Then it was bringing him food because he kept forgetting to eat. Then it just sat there, watching him work and asking questions about what he was doing. "Why do people build things this way?" she asked one afternoon as she watched him put together a temporary power relay using parts from 3 different systems. "Dragons would make a special part. You just use what you have to make things work." Tyler shrugged and kept working with his welding torch. "Most of the time we don't have the right parts. Can't afford them, can't find them, and can't wait for them to come. We make do. Use what you have to make it work. It doesn't look good, but it gets the job done." "It's interesting," Velara said in a low voice. "We make everything too complicated. Plan for every possible failure and add redundancy on top of redundancy. You just change." They began to speak. Talking for real. Not Empress to subject, not dragon to human, just 2 people talking to each other in a workshop. Tyler told her about growing up on Luna, in the small mining colonies where air was limited and recycled. About his brother who died in a fire in the engine room that Tyler couldn't stop, no matter how hard he worked or how fast he tried. About flying alone across the galaxy after that because it was easier than staying in one place long enough to care about people who might need him and he might fail. Velara didn't interrupt or give him empty comfort. She just listened like his story really mattered. And then little by little she began to share too. About the weight of centuries, about seeing people she loved grow old and die while she stayed the same. About how lonely it was to be so high up that no one saw her as a person anymore, only as a title, a symbol, or the Empress who had saved the galaxy at the cost of never being able to walk again. "They keep me safe from everything," she said one night as she watched the sun set through the workshop windows. "Every hard thing, every hard truth, every time you really had to face a challenge. They've made me into something delicate and valuable that needs to be kept safe in a glass case. I saved billions of lives, but somehow I lost my own in the process. Tyler stopped testing the power coupling and looked up. He said, "Same reason you sit alone," which was the same thing he had said days before. It's easier than trying to explain yourself to people who don't get it. The words hung in the air between them, too real and too honest. Velara could have told him to stop, reminded him that he was talking to an empress and that there were things he shouldn't say. But she didn't. She told him something that he didn't think she had ever told anyone else. "I don't remember what it feels like to have someone see me as something other than the empress. To be seen as Velara and nothing else. A person who is tired, lonely, and so alone that even her own council doesn't remember her birthday." Tyler put down all of his tools and paid full attention to her. "I see someone whose chair is held together by hope and spare parts. A person who runs a whole empire from a palace so empty that you can hear your own footsteps echo. I see someone who probably hasn't had a personal celebration in years." He thought about it for a moment before asking the question that had been bothering him since that first night. "When is your birthday?" "The day you were born, not the holiday." "What time is it?" "Yesterday," Velara said, and the loneliness in that one word could have filled the space between stars. 847 years. "And I spend it by myself just like I do everything else now." Tyler stood up and wiped the grease off his hands. His mind was already working through the options. "Then we're having a party today. It doesn't matter if you've ruled galaxies for hundreds of years. No one should have to spend their birthday alone." He began to search through the palace's public systems for anything fun that he could get to without needing permission from the Emperor. Velara looked at him with a look that was somewhere between disbelief and maybe hope. "What are you up to?" "Finding a way to celebrate," Tyler said, now more determined than ever. "You saved my life by letting me land here. At the very least, I can make sure your birthday isn't bad." Tyler saw Velara smile for the first time since they met. She really smiled, not the polite smile she wore to be diplomatic or the mask she wore for her council. This was real. She was shocked and moved by something as simple as someone caring enough to try. She was about to say something, probably something that would make them both feel bad, when the palace AI interrupted with a priority alert that made them both stop. "Ships coming in. More than one signature. Members of the Imperial Council are coming back early. 15 minutes until arrival." Tyler saw Velara's face change. The warmth left and was replaced by the cold Imperial mask. The moment was over. Reality was coming back. Tyler also had a bad feeling that the Council wouldn't like it if they found a random human mechanic who could go anywhere with their Empress. The holographic projections showed up in the Hall of Eternal Flame exactly 14 minutes later, just like they were supposed to. 3 huge dragon shapes appeared out of nowhere, and Tyler could see each scale and the anger in their eyes. The lead counselor's face was a deep red, almost black in some lights, and he had scars on his snout that showed he had fought battles long before Tyler's grandparents were born. Tharn, the High Counselor. Tyler knew who he was from the news, but his hologram looked a lot scarier when it was 30 feet tall and giving off heat like a furnace. "Empress," Tharn said in a formal and clipped voice. "We haven't been able to get in touch with you for 3 days. You missed 4 diplomatic calls and 2 scheduled council meetings. Security protocols show that a civilian person landed in the palace without permission and stayed there for a long time. Please explain." Tyler, who had been trying to hide in the corner of the hall, felt 3 pairs of old dragon eyes turn toward him. He suddenly knew how mice felt when hawks saw them in open fields. Tyler had been talking to someone for a week, but Velara's voice was calm and imperial, not like the person he had been talking to. "The person is here because I asked them to be. His ship needed urgent repairs. While he was here, he found serious problems with my personal mobility system that your maintenance teams didn't tell me about." Tharn's hologram flickered, and it looked like it was angry. "Empress, certified Imperial engineers take care of routine maintenance. There is no need to hire outside contractors, especially not people. If there were problems with your chair, they would have been reported in the right way." Tyler felt something hot and angry rise in his chest. He had spent days looking at diagnostic reports, which showed years of warning signs that had been ignored and safety systems that had been turned off. Proper channels had almost killed Velara. Tyler said, "With all due respect, Counselor, those proper channels were hiding catastrophic system failures because no one wanted to deliver bad news." His voice was steady even though his heart was racing. Her chair was about 6 to 8 weeks away from falling apart completely. It felt like the temperature in the hall dropped by 20 degrees. Tharn's hologram turned all the way toward Tyler, and his face looked like it could cut steel. "You have the nerve to interrupt a council meeting? Do you really want to question Imperial maintenance rules?" Who do you think you are to talk in front of the High Council? I'm the mechanic who's keeping your Empress from breaking her neck when her wheelchair finally gives out, Tyler said, surprising himself with how brave he was. And I have the diagnostic logs to back up everything I'm saying. He pulled out his datapad and quickly moved his fingers to project the repair reports into the air between them. Red lights flashing all over the place. Safety rules that didn't work. Stress fractures in the main systems. Years of maintenance reports that said everything was fine when it wasn't. Your Imperial engineers weren't taking care of her chair, Tyler said, his voice getting harder. They were hiding their mistakes and hoping nothing broke before their shift ended. Every one of these reports is signed off as okay, even though a first-year apprentice could see that the system was failing. The other two counselors were now looking at the data, and their faces changed from angry to worried. But Tharn wasn't going to give up. The Empress has a lot of qualified engineers. Technicians who are certified and have worked for decades. She doesn't need help from a human cargo hauler whose credentials are in doubt. Then where were they? Tyler asked. Where were all these skilled people when the repulsor coils were breaking? When were the safety governors turned off? When the backup systems were running themselves into the ground in an effort to make up for it? That's enough, Tharn said angrily. You've crossed every line of decency and protocol. Your Majesty, I must insist that this person be taken out of the palace right away. His being here is wrong and could be dangerous. Tyler's stomach dropped. He knew this was going to happen, but hearing it out loud made it real. He was going to be kicked out, and Velara would have to go back to being managed, protected, and kept away from people who cared more about rules than about her. He was about to say something to defend himself, which would probably make things worse, when Velara's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Not at all. One word. No, just no. But the weight behind it could have destroyed planets. The person stays until the work is done. This is not a request or a conversation. As your Empress, I have made my choice. Tharn's hologram flickered in surprise. Empress, you must understand the safety issues. The effects on diplomacy. The message this sends by letting a normal person into the Imperial Palace without any restrictions. I understand perfectly, Velara said, her voice as cold as empty ice. I know that my own people kept important equipment failures from me for years. I know that following the rules and being polite almost cost me my ability to move around. I know that this common human mechanic saw the truth in 5 minutes, while your certified engineers looked away for decades. At that point, the council members started to argue, with all three of them talking at once about rules, procedures, and the right way to do things. Tyler looked at Velara's face and saw how heavy their management was on her shoulders, like chains. When is my birthday? Suddenly Velara asked, cutting through their arguments. The holograms stopped talking because they didn't understand the question. Empress? One of the other counselors asked. Your naming day is a holiday for the whole world. Every year there are full ceremonies to remember it. I didn't ask about the holiday, Velara said in a low voice. I asked about my birthday. The real day. The day I was born. When is it? More quiet. Tyler saw the counselors' faces light up with understanding as they realized they didn't know. They had been planning public events for hundreds of years without ever knowing or caring about the actual date. Your Majesty, the exact date is of course recorded in the Imperial Archives, Tharn said, but he didn't sound sure of himself. 3 days ago, Velara said, and Tyler could hear the pain behind her royal calm. 3 days ago was my birthday. I turned 847 years old. And none of you said anything about it. None of you remembered. None of you saw past the Empress to see that I am still a person no matter what. The counselors now looked truly shocked. Tharn's hologram wasn't as sure of itself and aggressive anymore. We are sorry, Your Majesty. In the middle of dealing with diplomatic issues we didn't know. This person knew to ask, Velara said. This mechanic with a bad reputation thought I deserved to be celebrated. He saw me sitting alone in a palace that was empty and knew what it was. Being alone. Being alone. The slow death of being so high up that no one can reach me anymore. She stopped for a moment to let those words sink in. You keep me safe from everything. Please keep me safe from problems, challenges, and harsh truths. You have made me weak and need to be protected and cared for, and I should never have to deal with reality. You forgot that I'm not just your Empress when you did that. I am Velara. I saved this empire at the cost of my own body, and I deserve more than to be a carefully kept symbol in an empty palace. Tyler had never heard anyone talk like that before. Straightforward, honest, and cutting through centuries of rules to get to the heart of the matter. He saw the counselors having a hard time with it, trying to deal with criticism they had probably never heard before. Tharn looked like someone had hit him. The other counselors were looking at each other, and their faces went from defensive to ashamed. Your Majesty, we never meant to. I know, Velara said, and her voice was softer and more tired now. You had good intentions. You've always had good intentions. But intention doesn't change the outcome. You have cut me off from everyone else and called it protection. Tyler spoke up softly from his corner. I'll finish fixing things and then go. Make the chair work right and get out of the way. But Your Majesty, you deserve better than people who forget you're real. He began to turn toward the door, ready to leave. He was already mentally getting ready to pack his tools and start his half-finished ship. The council would be glad to see him leave. Things might go back to normal. He would go back to flying alone through empty space, and Velara would go back to her managed life. Hold on. His steps stopped when Velara spoke. Tyler turned around, and the look on her face made his chest feel tight. She looked both determined and scared, like someone who was about to jump off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. She used his full name for the first time since that first night and said, I have a question for you, Tyler Hayes. And I want the truth, not politics or diplomacy. Just the truth. Tyler nodded, but he didn't trust his voice. If I asked you to stay, Velara said slowly, choosing each word carefully, it wouldn't be for the repairs or because of rules, imperial contracts, or anything else official. I would ask you to stay just because I want you here. I value your honesty, your presence, and the fact that you see me as a person. Would you? There was no sound at all in the Hall of Eternal Flame. The holograms of the counselors were still waiting. Tyler could hear his heart beating in his ears. He thought about how empty his ship and his life were. About flying alone because it was easier than taking care of things. The talks, the stories they told each other, and the time Velara had smiled at the idea of celebrating her birthday a week ago. About how being in this huge palace with this old dragon empress made him feel less alone than all the years he had spent alone. Yes, Tyler said in a low voice. Yes, I would stay. If you wanted me to. Something in Velara's face changed and her imperial calmness broke. Maybe relief. Thank you. Oh. She turned to the holograms of the council, and her voice was once again full of authority. Tyler Hayes can stay in this palace as long as he wants. He will finish fixing the wheelchair. He will fix his own boat when he has time. And then, if he wants to, he can stay as my personal engineering consultant with full diplomatic status and a place to live. She stopped for a moment to make sure they knew this was the end. This audience is over. The holograms blinked out and died. Tyler and Velara were the only ones in the hall again. The silence between them was thick with everything that had been said and everything they still couldn't quite say. Tyler finally managed to laugh, though it was shaky. Well, I guess I'll stay then. Only if you really want to, Velara said softly. Tyler said, I do. And he meant it more than he had in years. The quiet that followed the council member's disappearance was different from the empty quiet Tyler had been used to for the past week. It was full of something, and they both had trouble finding the right words to say. Tyler stood there with his toolkit still hanging from his shoulder and grease under his nails. He felt completely out of place in this hall of eternal flames and ancient power. With those burning golden eyes that had probably seen empires rise and fall, Velara really looked at him. Tyler saw that she looked just as unsure as he did. She was an 800-year-old dragon empress who had fought armies and saved whole worlds. Now she seemed nervous about what was going to happen next. I meant it, she said softly, breaking the silence. What I told the council. You can stay if you want. Not just for fixing things. As long as you want. Tyler put down his tools so he could think for a moment. His whole life had been about moving around and not staying in one place long enough to get attached. Tyler had promised himself that he would never let his brother die again, even though he knew everything there was to know about engines, systems, and fixes. No more links. No one else needs him anymore. No more chances to let someone down who mattered. But this felt different in some way. She didn't need him to save her. She wanted him to be there for her. To be there. To see her as a real person and not just a symbol. That kind of pressure didn't make him want to keep going. It was a whole other thing. Can I ask you a question? Tyler said, getting closer to where she was sitting. And you can let me know if I'm wrong. Velara nodded, and a small smile crept across her dragon-like face. You've already stopped a council meeting and said bad things about imperial rules. I don't think we need to worry about lines anymore. Tyler laughed in surprise at that. Good point. All right, here's the deal. Why me? You are an empress. You could bring anyone from the galaxy here. You could have diplomats, engineers, or anyone else you wanted. What does it matter if a random cargo hauler stays or leaves? For a long time, Velara was quiet as she thought about the question with the kind of care that Tyler was starting to notice. She never did anything quickly or without thinking. Everything was thought about, weighed and looked at from every angle. It was probably what kept empires going for hundreds of years. Because you didn't see the Empress first, she finally said. When you first walked into this hall that night, hurt, lost and probably scared, you saw a broken wheelchair before you saw a crown. You offered to help me before you even knew who I was. And even after you knew, you still treated me like a person who needed honesty instead of careful handling. She pointed to the empty hall around them. I have thousands of people who would do anything for the Empress. Billions of people honor the symbol I stand for. But I haven't had anyone in a long time who just wanted to share a birthday cake with Velara. Who told me directly that my chair was broken instead of hiding it behind maintenance reports. Who got mad on my behalf when the council tried to fire me. Tyler's chest hurt when he read those words because they made him feel so alone. He had chosen to be alone and had done so on purpose. But Velara had been alone with a lot of people around her, which seemed worse in some way. At least Tyler knew why he was alone. Velara had been drowning in people who never really saw her. He said softly, I get it. After my brother died, I flew alone for 10 years. I told myself it was freedom and that I liked being by myself. But I was really just scared. I was afraid that if I let anyone close or needed me, I would let them down the same way I let him down. He looked down at his hands, which were rough and dirty from years of fixing things. But this is what I learned last week. Being by myself didn't set me free. It only made me feel empty. And you, sitting in this palace with all these people taking care of you, protecting you and keeping you alone, are just as empty as I was. Velara nodded slowly. So what happened? Why did you choose to stay? Yes, you did, Tyler said simply. You told me when your birthday was. You showed me the person behind all that power. And I thought that maybe the problem isn't that I care about people. Maybe the problem is running away from it. He took a deep breath and said the words he had been avoiding for days. I want to stay. Not because you're giving me diplomatic status, nice rooms or anything else. I want to stay because I don't feel alone for the first time in 10 years. I don't feel empty anymore, even when we're working in silence or you're busy with Empire stuff and I'm elbow deep in repulsor coils. Valera's face changed and warmth came back into those old eyes. Then stay, she said. Please. You can stay as long as you want. As long as we both want. Tharn appeared again, this time as a hologram that was smaller and less scary. He knocked on the door with just his head and shoulders, like a dragon would do instead of barging in. Excuse me, Empress, for the interruption. We need to make it official that Tyler, the human, will stay with you. Proper documentation, diplomatic credentials, and security clearance. Make it happen, Velara said, her voice strong but not harsh. Full residential status. Full access to the palace. And what about Tharn? Thanks for getting it. Tyler didn't think it was possible, but the counselor really did look embarrassed. We should have seen it, Your Majesty. Your loneliness. Your being alone. We let you down and we're sorry. Tyler got back to work on the wheelchair with a new sense of purpose after Tharn's hologram disappeared. Now the repairs meant something different. This wasn't just fixing a piece of equipment. It gave Velara real freedom because she knew her equipment wouldn't let her down and that someone had really cared enough to fix it right. They got into a new routine over the next few days. Tyler would work in the mornings while Velara took care of Empire business, but now she didn't just go to the workshop. She moved her mobile office there so she could handle diplomatic calls and treaty reviews while Tyler welded, tested, and rebuilt. They would eat lunch together, and Tyler would show her terrible human food that made her laugh because it was so bland compared to dragon food. They talked at night. They really talked like Tyler hadn't talked to anyone since his brother died. Velara told him about her childhood, how she learned to fly before humans had spaceships, and how hard it was to see civilizations grow and change while she stayed the same. Tyler told stories about growing up poor on Luna, how his brother taught him everything he knew about engines, and how guilt had been eating away at him for 10 years. Do you know it wasn't your fault? One night Velara said. They were in the Hall of Eternal Flame, watching the fires dance in peace. Your brother is dead. You couldn't have helped him. Tyler said, I was right there, and the guilt came back. I knew engines. I should have known there was a problem. And I knew weapons, Velara said softly. I've been through 1,000 fights. But I couldn't avoid the one that made me freeze up. Tyler, sometimes bad things happen even when we try our best. That doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It just makes them sad. Tyler felt something break free in his chest, like a knot of guilt that had been there for so long that it felt like it was part of him. What do you do about it? What if? You might be thinking that things would be different if you had been faster, smarter, or better. I tell myself that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, Velara said. I try to honor those I've lost by living life to the fullest instead of hiding from it. Your brother wouldn't want you to fly alone all the time, would he? Tyler said, no. He'd probably kick my ass for being unhappy for 10 years. Then stop wasting time, Velara said with a small smile. Stay here. Make something new. Be happy. Tyler finished fixing the wheelchair on the 6th day. As soon as he turned on the system, he could tell the difference. No more hum to make up for it. Stabilizers won't have to work as hard anymore. Just a smooth, quiet, and perfect operation. The repulsors instantly followed Velara's mental commands, and the whole system was strong, balanced, and safe. Velara led it through the palace halls, and Tyler saw her face light up with something like happiness. She moved faster and with more confidence than she had in a long time, trusting the equipment in a way she hadn't in years. She really did smile when she came back to the workshop. That's perfect, she said. I had forgotten what it was like to have equipment that worked right. Good, Tyler said as he wiped his hands on a rag. Because you deserve tools that work. And people who are honest with you. And birthdays that are fun. His ship was also fixed. Set to fly. Fueled, patched, and all systems are go. Tyler could go whenever he wanted. Go back to flying alone across the galaxy, hauling cargo, and staying safe in his own space. They didn't say anything about it. Tyler brought something to the Hall of Eternal Flame that night. He had spent hours trying to make something that looked like birthday cakes from Earth using the palace's food synthesizers. He ended up with something small and probably not very good, but he had figured out how to use a light crystal as a candle. He said, I told you we were celebrating your birthday, sounding embarrassed but determined. I know it's late. Very late. But it's better late than never, right? Tyler saw Velara's eyes get wet as she looked at the small cake and the single flickering light. He didn't know that dragons could cry. Tyler Hayes, this is the most kind thing anyone has done for me in 100 years. They shared the terrible fake cake, which was probably the worst thing Tyler had ever eaten, but Velara didn't care. She told him about the traditions of Dragon Naming Day when she was a kid, and Tyler told her about the festivals on Earth that his brother used to make him go to. The hours flew by like minutes. Tyler stood up to go to his room when the palace lights went out for the night. Velara's hand grabbed his wrist, but it was gentle even though it had claws. I don't want you to go, she said, sounding weak in a way that empresses probably shouldn't have. Not to your room. Not off-world tomorrow. Honestly, never. I don't want this to end. Tyler looked at this old, strong being who was just asking him, not telling him what to do or demanding anything. He also realized that he didn't want it to end. He wanted to stay somewhere for the first time in 10 years. With a person. He said simply, then I won't go. I'll stay here for as long as you need me. And what if I want you to stay here forever? Tyler smiled. Then I guess I'm here for good. At dawn, Tyler woke up to alarms going off all over the palace. Not the polite bells that let you know when someone was coming or when a meeting was set. These were the kinds of alarms that meant real trouble. They made your heart race before you even had time to think about why. He was out of bed and putting on his coveralls in seconds, thanks to muscle memory from years of doing emergency repairs. When he got to the main hallway, the whole palace was red with warning lights, and the holographic displays were showing something that made his stomach drop. Vessels. 12 of them, huge warships that were bigger than any ships Tyler had ever seen, were in high orbit around Draemoth Prime like vultures circling something that was dying. They had markings he didn't know, all sharp angles and aggressive designs. They were nothing like the graceful curves of Dragon Imperial ships. Tyler saw Velara in the command center, a room he didn't even know was there until now. She sat in her newly fixed wheelchair, surrounded by holographic tactical displays. She looked completely different. This wasn't the lonely dragon who had eaten birthday cake with him. This was the Empress who had kept an empire together for 800 years, and she looked just as dangerous as the warships above. What's going on? Tyler asked as he walked over to stand next to her chair. The Corval Dominion, Velara said, her voice tight with anger that she was trying to hide. A militant group that has been fighting against dragon rule for decades. They haven't said much lately. I should have known they were up to something. One of the tactical displays lit up, showing a dragon that made Tyler's skin crawl just looking at it. Warchief Cress was huge and had dark scales all over his body that looked more like armor than skin. His face and neck were covered in scars. Tyler had learned to spot this kind of fanaticism in people who were completely sure they were right. Empress Velara, Cress's voice echoed through the palace speakers, shaking the walls. I come to test your ability to rule. You sit in that chair, broken and weak, and say you are the leader of the strongest warrior race in the galaxy. It's an insult to everything our people believe in. Tyler felt a hot, angry feeling rise up in his chest. But Valera's hand gently touched his arm, asking him to let her handle this. He made himself stay quiet with his hands and fists. "Tell me what your problem is, Cress," Velara said coldly. "Say what you want to say." "You know what I want," Cress said again, and his hologram smiled in a way that had nothing to do with being funny. "One-on-one combat. You and I, in front of everyone with the usual rules. Show that you can still protect your throne, or give it up and let someone else take your place." There was a lot going on at the command center. Military advisors appearing as holograms, security chiefs running threat assessments, and diplomats frantically figuring out the political fallout. Tyler just stood there, watching Valera's face lose blood as she realized how bad things were. Tharn's hologram appeared, bigger than the others, and his voice shook with rage. "This is outrageous. Ancient combat law hasn't been used in 300 years. You can't really expect the Empress to fight in her state." Cress shot back. "I expect her to show that she is fit to rule. Or say she isn't. Those are the only two choices. If you refuse the challenge, every group that has ever questioned dragon leadership will know that your Empress hides behind her council instead of facing threats herself. The Empire will break apart in a year." Tyler's mind was racing with what this meant. It wasn't just about the fight. This was political war disguised as tradition. Cress had Velara in a tight spot. Accept and probably die, or refuse and watch her empire fall apart as everyone who had been waiting for a sign of weakness finally got one. "How much time do we have?" Velara asked, and her voice was steady even though everything was going wrong. Cress said, 3 days. The arena will be ready. Everyone in Draemoth Prime will see. You have 3 days to figure out if you're an Empress or just a broken chair. The transmission stopped. The command center was in chaos, with everyone talking at once, suggesting plans, strategies, and backup plans. Tyler, on the other hand, only had eyes for Velara. She was sitting perfectly still in her wheelchair, staring at nothing, and she looked more alone than he had ever seen her. "Get out of here," she said softly. Her voice grew louder and louder until it could break steel. "Everyone out." Now, the holograms disappeared. The advisors ran away. In less than a minute, Tyler and Velara were the only ones left in the empty command center. They were surrounded by screens showing the 12 warships and all the political calculations that went along with them. "I can't win this fight," Velara said. Her voice was small and sad, nothing like the Empress's voice that had filled the room a few moments before. 300 years ago, my body betrayed me. Cress is at the top of his game and has been training for battle his whole life. I can't even stand up without this chair, and I'm 800 years old. She looked down at her hands, which had once been weapons but were now just claws that helped her use controls. But I can't say no either. Not without showing him he was right. Not without letting every enemy of the Empire know that I'm weak, that I'm open to attack, and that it might be time for someone else to take over. Tyler squatted down next to her wheelchair so she could see his face. There has to be another way. Some loophole, some other way. There isn't, Velara said angrily. I wrote half of these laws myself when I could still fly. Traditional fighting is absolute. No substitutes, no proxies, and no backing down. I either face him myself or give up. Those are the only choices. The silence between them was thick with choices that couldn't be made. Tyler's mind was racing as he tried to find answers, just like he would when he was trying to fix a broken engine. There had to be something, some point of view that no one else could see. He suddenly asked, "What are the exact rules?" "For the fight. What is okay?" Velara looked at him, not sure what to make of the question. Fighting dragons the old-fashioned way. No weapons other than natural skills. No outside help. The fight goes on until one side gives up or dies. But you can use equipment, right? Tyler pushed. Gear for yourself? Improvements? You said traditional, which means going back to when dragons wore armor and used tools. Yes, but Tyler, armor won't help me. I can't move like he can. I can't fly, I can't dodge, I can't. What if we don't try to get you to fight like him? Tyler cut in, his mind racing ahead and seeing new options. What if we keep doing what we've been doing? What if we change? Velara looked at him. What do you mean? Tyler got up and started pacing, his thoughts coming together faster than he could say them. Dragons make everything too complicated, right? You said that. Cress will fight the same way that dragons have always fought. Strength, speed, and a lot of power. He has been preparing for that his whole life. He'll want you to try to meet him on those terms. Velara said, I can't match him on any terms. No, but you don't have to. Tyler turned to look at her, And even though what he was about to say was crazy, he was getting more and more excited. We don't help you. We fix the fight. We change that chair into something Cress has never seen before. We use chaos, tactics, and engineering that are human. Instead of letting him fight on his terms, we make him fight on ours. Valera's eyes grew big. You want to turn my wheelchair into a weapon? Tyler said, I want to give you a fighting chance. Hey, I already fixed that chair once. I know everything about each system, including its strengths and weaknesses. I could make it into a combat platform in 3 days with the right parts. Shields, weapons, and better movement. Nothing against the rules, just equipment that uses your chair as a base. That's crazy, Velara said. But Tyler could see something moving in her eyes. Not quite hope, but maybe a chance of hope. Tyler said, it's human. We don't play fair. We don't try to be stronger. We change things up and do things that no one expects to win. Cress learns how to fight dragons. He doesn't know how to fight a combat system made by people. Velara was quiet for a long time as she thought about it. Tyler could almost see her brain working through the options, weighing the odds and figuring out the risks. She had been in charge of the military at one point. She knew how to fight in strange ways. Even if we could build it, she finally said, and even if the council let us, this is still very dangerous. The chair might not work. The systems might not work right. I could die. Tyler bluntly said, you'll definitely die if you face him without it. This way you at least have a chance. A real chance. There was another long silence. Tyler saw Valera's face change as she felt different things. Yes, fear. But also determination, the same iron will that saved an empire 300 years ago. The same strength that had kept her going through years of being alone and isolated. She asked in a low voice, do you really think we can do this? Tyler thought about his brother and how guilty he felt for not being able to save him. About how he had promised himself that he would never let someone down again. About how Velara had become more important to him than he had ever thought she would be. Yes, he said with conviction. I believe that if we all work together and use every trick, adaptation, and crazy idea we can think of, we can give Cress the fight of his life. Will it be simple? No. Is it going to be dangerous? Of course. But it's better than quitting. Velara reached out and took Tyler's hand with her clawed hand. Then let's make something that can't be done. Let's show them what it really means to adapt. Tyler gently squeezed her hand. We have 3 days. We should get going. Tyler tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong as they walked out of the command center together. I tried not to think about how likely it was that I would succeed. He tried not to think about what would happen if his engineering failed and Velara had to pay the price. He thought about what he had been doing since he got here instead. Repairing what was broken. Making something new. Giving someone he cared about a chance to live. 3 days to make a weapon out of a wheelchair. 3 days to save a kingdom. 3 days to show that the best answer isn't always the usual one. For the next 72 hours, Tyler's whole world was the workshop. He didn't sleep, hardly ate, and only had caffeine and pure willpower to keep him going. Velara stayed with him the whole time, even when she was tired and her scales were dull and her eyes were heavy. They began with the basics. Tyler took the wheelchair apart and showed off all of its parts, including the frame, the circuits, and the power lines. Then he started to put it back together in a way that had never been done before. A mix of dragon technology and human creativity that broke about 100 engineering rules and didn't care. Shield generators first, Tyler said quietly, more to himself than to Velara. He was taking parts out of his cargo ship, which was military-grade gear he had been bringing to a colony outpost and wasn't supposed to have. We can reroute the secondary systems and give up some of the comfort features. Your chair's power core can handle the load. Comfort isn't really a priority right now, Velara said dryly, watching him work with those old golden eyes that never seemed to miss anything. Tyler added shield emitters to the chair's frame in a way that made them look like they had always been there. The shields weren't as strong as those on a battleship, but they could take hits that would have broken bones and scales. They would give Velara precious seconds to respond, fight back, and survive blows that should have killed her. Next came the ability to move. Tyler had just fixed the repulsor system, but it wasn't meant for moving around in combat. It was made to move smoothly and steadily through the halls of the palace. Tyler ripped all of that out and put in thruster assemblies from fighter craft. These small but very powerful units could move the chair in ways that didn't make sense or follow the laws of physics. Tyler warned, "You're going to have to practice with these," as he tested the response time. They're jumpy. Touchy. If you think about moving, you'll move. Think too hard and you'll fly across the arena like a missile. Show me, Velara said. Tyler spent 6 hours just teaching Velara how to move, showing her how to use the new control systems and how to think in 3 dimensions instead of 2. The chair could now strafe, dodge, and even lift itself up for a short time. It wasn't really flying, but it was close enough to matter. It took Velara 17 times crashing into walls before she got the hang of it. Every time Tyler's heart stopped, she was afraid the impacts would hurt her or break the systems. But she just gritted her teeth, started over, and tried again. Tyler remembered why she had been Empress for 800 years when he saw how fierce her determination was. Next came the weapons, and this is where Tyler had to think outside the box. Dragon combat laws said that weapons from outside the game couldn't be used, but these laws were written hundreds of years ago when no one thought of using a wheelchair as a weapon. Tyler put energy projectors in the armrests of the chair, where they looked like structural supports. They weren't strong enough to kill, at least not against dragon scales, but they could burn, confuse, and make openings. Tyler said, "You're not trying to overpower him," as he ran firing drills while Velara got used to the targeting systems. "You're trying to make him mad. Bother him. Make him mad and messy. You burn him just enough to hurt every time he attacks. You always go somewhere he doesn't expect when he thinks he's got you cornered." Velara understood the plan and said, "Death by 1,000 cuts." "That's right. In a straight fight, Cress is bigger, stronger, and faster. But you'll be everywhere at once, impossible to catch, and always stinging him until he makes a mistake." Managing the power was the hardest part. All of these systems, including shields, thrusters, and weapons, used a lot of energy. Tyler had to completely redesign the power distribution network so that it could move energy between systems as needed. Shields to protect yourself, thrusters to get away, and weapons to attack. It needed computer-assisted management that was faster than conscious thought. Tyler wrote the tactical AI himself, staying up all night while Velara slept in a chair next to him. He took algorithms from fighter craft targeting computers, added what he had learned about combat as a ship mechanic dealing with pirates, and then added every dirty trick he had ever learned about winning fights you shouldn't be able to win. The council came to check out the changes on the second day. Tharn's real body was even more intimidating than his hologram. His red scales caught the workshop lights as he looked at Tyler's work with clear doubt. "This isn't normal fighting," Tharn said flatly, his voice full of anger. "This goes against the spirit of the challenge, even if it follows the letter of the law." Tyler shot back, "The spirit of the challenge is that Velara proves she can defend herself." He didn't back down even though the counselor was about 10 times his size. "She's doing it. Not the way Cress thinks it will. It's not good for her image," said another council member, looking at the weapon systems with disgust. "Like she needs tricks from people to win. Like she isn't a real dragon when she fights." Tyler said, "She can't," and he felt Velara flinch next to him. He turned to look her in the eye. "That's not a bad thing to say. You can't fight the way Cress wants you to. Your body won't let you. We change then. We make the most of what you have instead of mourning what you've lost. That's not being weak. That's smart." When Velara looked into his eyes, Tyler saw both fear and gratitude. For hundreds of years, people had kept her safe and told her what she couldn't do and what she shouldn't risk. It was probably scary for her to hear someone tell her to accept her flaws and use them to her advantage. "He's right," she said quietly to the council. "I can't win the way Cress wants me to fight. But I might win by fighting as myself, using tools, strategy, and the ability to change. That's what I did 300 years ago to save this empire. Instead of facing the threat head-on, I changed how I acted." Tharn didn't say anything for a long time. Then to my surprise he nodded. "Very well. But know this, Empress. If this doesn't work, if these changes kill you, people will think you were unfit to rule. There will be serious political consequences." Velara said with dark humor, "If I die, political consequences won't be my problem." Tyler and Velara worked in silence after the council left, making last-minute changes, testing systems, and getting ready for something that seemed more impossible with each passing hour. Tyler's hands shook because he was tired and had too much caffeine, but he couldn't stop or rest. Every system he built could mean the difference between Velara living and dying. On the third morning, Tyler put in the last part, a backup power cell hidden in the base of the chair. If the main systems failed, this cell would give Velara 30 seconds of full power. 30 seconds to protect, to move, and to stay alive long enough for help to arrive. It wasn't a lot, but it was better than nothing. "It's done," he said, his voice rough from not getting enough sleep. 3 days is the best I can do." Velara moved the chair in every way possible, giving each system one last test. Shields lit up, taking in fake hits. The thrusters fired in the right order, moving her through the workshop in ways that should have been impossible. Weapons were charged and locked on targets with the help of computers. She looked like something out of a bad dream. A dragon empress in a combat wheelchair, with weapons that were hard to see, surrounded by shield shimmer. She moved with unnatural grace even though she was paralyzed. Tyler had never seen her look so dangerous before. "How do I look?" Velara asked, and a little bit of her old humor broke through the tension. Tyler said, "It's scary. Cress is going to see you and know he made a big mistake. Or he'll laugh at the crippled empress in her toy made by humans and kill me in the first 30 seconds, Velara said. Tyler moved in front of her chair so she had to look him in the eye. "Pay attention to me. You are not disabled. You are used to it. You lived through something that should have killed you and ruled for 300 years. You're about to fight a warrior in his prime with gear that no one has ever seen before. You're going to win because you're smarter, more experienced, and too stubborn to give up. You trust someone you met 2 weeks ago a lot," Velara said in a soft voice. "I believe in someone who saw a lost mechanic and invited him in instead of shooting him out of the sky," Tyler said. "Someone who shared her birthday cake with her, even though it tasted bad. Someone who's been in fights her whole life and isn't going to stop now." Velara reached out, and Tyler took her clawed hand in his human hand. For a moment, the mechanic and the Empress, the human and the dragon, sat like that. They were two people who had found something unexpected in each other and didn't want to lose it. "The arena is being set up," Velara finally said. "Broadcast all over the world. A lot of people will watch. If I don't make it," Tyler cut in, "you won't. We made something that shouldn't have been possible in 3 days. We're not going to stop now." Velara left the workshop in her new wheelchair, and Tyler walked next to her with his diagnostic pad ready to check on all the systems. The hallways of the palace felt different now, full of excitement and fear. People who worked there stopped to stare as they saw their empress walking to her death with a human mechanic by her side. The arena was very old. It was carved out of volcanic rock thousands of years ago and was a circular platform that hung in the air above the capital city. Tyler had seen it on the news, but being there in person made his stomach drop. It was huge, at least 100 meters wide, and there was nothing but empty air below it for a kilometer. Cress was already there, and seeing him in person made everything feel very real all of a sudden. He was even bigger than his hologram showed, and he had battle scars all over him. His wings were spread out in an aggressive way that cast shadows over half the arena. He laughed, which sounded like metal grinding when he saw Velara's changed wheelchair. "You bring toys for people to face me?" Cress yelled, and his voice could be heard all over the arena and on every radio on Earth. "You prove my point, Broken Empress. You hide behind machines because you know you can't win." Tyler wanted to yell back and protect Velara, but this wasn't his fight. He could only watch from the control room as Velara got into position. Her chair hummed with barely contained power. The efficient, an ancient dragon even older than Velara, raised one of its claws. "Old law, old-fashioned fighting. You can bring any personal items you want. The fight goes on until someone gives up or dies. Dragon Law will be happy." Tyler saw Velara from a distance and held up his diagnostic pad, which showed that all systems were green. Everything he had made and everything they had planned was ready and working. Now it was up to his engineering and her skill to beat raw power and battle experience. The officiant's hand fell. Cress shot forward with deadly speed, claws out, sure that this would be over in seconds. Tyler's heart stopped when he saw Velara's chair explode into motion. It moved in ways that Cress clearly hadn't expected, changing the rules of dragon combat with human engineering. The battle for everything had begun. Cress came at Velara like a meteor, full of rage and muscle and complete self-assurance. His claws were out, ready to rip through both the chair and the Empress in one deadly blow. Tyler watched from the control room, gripping the railing so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Every muscle in his body was tense, as if he could somehow help from 100 meters away. But Velara didn't stop. She didn't get scared. As soon as Cress started his attack, she fired the side thrusters. The chair moved so quickly to the side that it blurred, going in a way that Cress clearly didn't expect. He couldn't grab anything with his claws, and his speed made him crash into the arena floor where Velara had been standing just half a second before. The hit broke the stone and sent dust flying into the air. The crowd, which included thousands of dragons on floating platforms around the arena, went completely quiet. That wasn't how dragons fought. You didn't avoid like that. You fought back with force and power just like people have done for thousands of years. Tyler let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The first move worked, but this fight was going to last a long time. Cress got better quickly and turned to see where Velara was now. His eyes showed a hint of confusion under the anger. He thought it would be easy to beat an opponent who was hurt, Instead, he fell face-first into volcanic rock while she danced away like smoke. Cress yelled, "Coward," so loudly that everyone who heard it could hear it. "Don't run away like prey. Stand and fight like a warrior." Velara shot her weapons, two beams of concentrated energy that hit Cress across his shoulder plates. They weren't strong enough to get through his armored scales, but they were hot enough to hurt, sting, and make him roar in pain and surprise. "I am fighting," Velara called back, her voice cold and commanding like that of a ruler of empires. "Not the way you want me to, though. Cress, that's called adaptation. You should give it a shot sometime." Cress took off into the air, flapping his wings hard to try to use his speed to his advantage. From the air, he could attack from any direction and rain down blows faster than Velara could react. It was a smart move, just what Tyler thought he would do. That's why they were ready for it. Valera's chair couldn't really fly, but it could jump and had limited vertical thrust. She fired all of her thrusters down at once as Cress dove from above and reached for her with claws. The chair shot up 20 meters in a controlled burst, and Velara fired the weapons at close range. The energy beams hit Cress right in the face. He screamed, more out of shock than pain, and his dive turned into a chaotic tumble as he tried to see better. This time he hit the arena floor harder, and Tyler could see real cracks spreading through his scales. Damage, but not too much. Tyler was watching every system from the control room, keeping an eye on power levels, structural integrity, and heat buildup. The chair was working perfectly, and every change worked exactly as it was supposed to. But the power drain was very strong. Every time they moved, fired a weapon, or turned on their shields, they were using up their energy reserves faster than he had hoped. "Come on, Velara," he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Keep moving. Let him chase you. Make him tired." And that's exactly what she did. For the next 10 minutes, Velara turned the arena into a three-dimensional maze, with herself as the impossible target. Cress would charge at her and she would strafe. He'd try to trap her, but she'd jump over him. He would spread his wings to stop her from getting away, but she would shoot through them with only a few centimeters to spare. Every time he attacked, she shot him with weapons that weren't strong enough to hurt him badly but were strong enough to make him matter and make him messier. The crowd that was watching went from quiet to whispering to actually cheering. Tyler could hear them through the arena sound system. Thousands of voices expressing shock, disbelief, and growing respect. They were watching their Empress fight in a way that had never been done before, and it was working. But Cress was changing too. He was a trained and experienced warrior, and he learned from each failed attack. He started to fake strikes, making it look like he was going to hit Velara and then pulling back when she dodged. He started to use his size to push her toward the edges of the arena, where she couldn't move as freely. He was still stronger and faster in a straight line, and he was figuring out how she was defending herself. Tyler saw it happen and his stomach tightened. "Don't fall for it," he said under his breath. "He's getting ready for something big." Cress suddenly changed his plans. Instead of running at Velara, he picked up a piece of broken arena floor, a piece of volcanic rock the size of a cargo container, and threw it with terrifying force. Velara got out of the way, but that was the plan. Cress closed the distance faster than it should have been possible while she was dodging the projectile. His claws got stuck on the edge of Valera's chair. Warnings lit up on Tyler's diagnostic display. Damage to the structure. Shield generators having trouble. Power drain went up as systems tried to make up for it. Cress was pulling on the chair, trying to flip it over and get Velara out of her protection and into direct combat, where she had no chance. "Protocol for emergencies." Tyler yelled, but Velara couldn't hear him. His hands flew over his diagnostic pad, bringing up the backup program they had written. The chair would, if Velara set it off. She started it. The chair's capacitors all let go of their stored energy at the same time, sending out a huge pulse. It wasn't a weapon, not really. It was more like a small thunderstorm that lasted for a split second. The electromagnetic pulse pushed Cress back hard enough to make him roll across the arena floor. Smoke rose from his scales where the energy had burned him. But the price was too high. Tyler saw his power readings drop to dangerous levels. Shields are down. 20% of weapons. Mobility systems that use backup reserves. They had given Velara some breathing room, but now she was only able to fight with about a quarter of her original strength. Cress got up slowly and Tyler could see that he had hurt himself. Burns on his arms and chest. One wing is hanging at a strange angle. He had trouble breathing. He was hurt, really hurt, which he clearly didn't expect from a crippled Empress in a wheelchair. "You fight like a human," Cress said, and even though it was meant to be an insult, it sounded like he respected the other person. "Not clean. Sneaky. Dishonorable. I fight to stay alive, Velara said. Tyler could tell from the audio feed that she was tired. And to keep what I've built safe. You thought it would be easy to beat me because you thought I was weak. But Cress, you forgot something. She moved slowly and carefully, and the broken chair still followed her commands, even though most of its systems were down. I didn't live for 300 years in this chair because I was weak. I stayed alive because I was smarter than everyone who thought I was dumb. By changing when others stuck to the old ways. By winning fights I shouldn't be able to win because I wouldn't fight them on anyone else's terms. Tyler saw Cress get tense as he got ready for one last charge. The warrior knew he was hurt, knew he was embarrassed, and knew he had to end this now or he might actually lose to the impossible. This next exchange was the most important one. Velara, your power's almost gone, Tyler said quietly as he looked at his screens. You have about 30 seconds of full thrust left. Make them count. Cress charged, not with the calm confidence he had before but with rage. He came down low and fast with his wings tucked in, using all the speed and power he had left. Velara stood still and waited for Tyler to get closer until his heart was in his throat. She fired all of the thrusters at full power at the last possible second. This time the chair didn't move to the side. It went straight ahead, right at Cress, and turned into a battering ram that moved at speeds that the design was never meant to handle. Velara aimed for his hurt wing, which was his weak spot. If she could hurt it enough, it would keep him from flying again. They hit each other with a sound like thunder. The impact sent both of them flying across the arena. Cress fell to the ground and rolled, and his hurt wing crumpled underneath him. Valera's chair crashed hard, and Tyler's diagnostic display was full of alarms and flashing red lights. Neither of them moved. Tyler couldn't get any air. The whole arena was quiet, and thousands of dragons and millions of people watching on TV were holding their breath. The referee moved slowly forward to check on both fighters. Cress was lying on his side, awake but not moving. His wing was bent at an angle that made Tyler wince even from this distance. He hit hard enough to break something that mattered. Valera's chair was upside down, smoking a little, and the systems were down. But Tyler saw the smallest movement. Valera's hand gripping the edge of the chair's frame and the power indicators flickering weakly as the backup systems kicked in. The chair slowly and shakily righted itself, using what had to be the emergency reserves Tyler had put in place as a last resort. Velara sat up straight, hurt and tired but still able to do her job. Cress, on the other hand, was lying on the ground and couldn't go on. The officiator raised his hand. Empress Velara wins. The challenge has been met. Dragon Law is happy. The crowd's roar was so loud it hurt my ears. Not polite clapping or dutiful celebration. Cheering that is real, honest and loud. They had just seen their Empress do the impossible, and they had seen her do it by not being what anyone thought she should be. Tyler's legs gave out, and he fell into a chair in the control room, shaking with relief and fear that had been building up. She had done it. They had done it. They had won even though they shouldn't have been able to with the tools they had and the strategies they used. His communicator came to life with a crackle. Valera's voice, weak but alive, said things that made his chest tight with feelings he couldn't quite put into words. Tyler? Tell me the chair can move. Please tell me how to reach you. Because I really need someone to be with me right now. Tyler said, systems are barely working, his voice rough. But yes, you are free to move. I'm coming to see you. He ran out of the control room, down hallways and through groups of celebrating dragons, who all moved aside to let the human mechanic pass. He got to the arena entrance just as Valera's broken chair limped through the door, barely holding together and running on willpower and emergency power reserves. Tyler caught her as she fell forward, too tired to do anything else. He whispered, "You did it. You really did it." "We did it," Velara said, her voice barely audible. "Your engineering. Your plans. You thought I could win. We did this together." The palace around them burst into celebration. The Empress had fought to keep her throne. The Empire was safe. Everything was going to be fine. But at that moment, Tyler and Velara just held on to each other. They were two people who had built something impossible and lived through it, and neither of them was ready to let go. For hours after the fight, the palace medical center was a mess. Doctors crowded around Velara, checking her for injuries, running scans, and arguing in medical language that Tyler couldn't understand. He sat in the corner of the room, still shaking with adrenaline and relief, watching them work while his mind replayed every scary moment of the battle. Velara had a cracked rib, bruises, and was very tired from the last impact, but she was still alive. That was all that mattered. She was alive, she had won, and the Empire was safe. Everything else could be fixed. Tharn came in while the doctors were still working, and his huge body blocked the door. Tyler got tense because he thought people would be angry or upset with the strange ways of fighting. The High Counselor did something Tyler never thought he would do. He bent down. He really bowed, lowering his head to Velara in respect. "Empress, the Council has made a decision about Tyler Hayes," Tharn said in a formal tone. He turned to face Tyler directly when Velara nodded for him to go on. "We were wrong. About you, what the Empress needed, and how we've been serving her for hundreds of years." Tyler blinked, completely shocked. "I'm sorry, what?" Tharn went on. "We saw you get her ready for battle. We saw you believe in her when we were ready to look for other options and ways around it. We saw you give her the tools to be herself instead of trying to change her into something she couldn't be. We realized that for years we had been failing her by trying to keep her safe from everything instead of being there for her through anything." One of the other counselors stepped up, looking uncomfortable but determined. "We forgot that she's a person first and an empress second. Instead of being a leader we served, we made her a symbol we controlled. That is no longer the case. First, she needs to make sure she has people around her who can see her." Tharn turned around and looked at Velara. "Tyler Hayes must be given full diplomatic status and the right to live in the country permanently if he wants to stay. Everyone on the council agrees with this. We know what happens when the Empress has someone who treats her like an equal instead of a relic to be kept." He said more than that, and the way he said it made it sound heavy. Tharn went on, his voice getting softer. "We also apologize formally, Your Majesty. Not only did you not notice your loneliness, but you also made it worse. We thought we were honoring your sacrifice by keeping you from having to deal with hard things. We were, on the other hand, slowly erasing the person we said we were serving." Tyler paid close attention to Valera's face. She didn't look like she was angry. More like someone dealing with pain that had been there for so long that they had forgotten about it. The kind of pain that an apology couldn't fix, but maybe an acknowledgement could help it start to heal. "I believe what you say," Velara said softly, her voice tired but honest. "Not as forgiveness because that will take time. But as a sign that things need to change. I don't want to be safe anymore. I want help. There is a difference." "We get it," Tharn said. "And we'll do better." It was just Tyler and Velara in the medical room after the council left. The doctors finally left, and the noise from the party outside died down to a manageable level. She sat in a temporary chair while Tyler worked on fixing her combat-modified chair in his workshop. Even though she was a 20-foot dragon, she looked small in some way. Weak in a way that didn't have anything to do with being hurt. "So," Velara said, breaking the silence. "They want to make your stay official. The whole formal arrangement, including diplomatic status and permanent housing." She stopped and looked at his face with those old eyes. "Is that what you want? Or were you just being nice to an empress who was all alone?" Tyler got up from his corner and walked over to her, where he had to look up to meet her eyes. "I would have said no 2 weeks ago. I would have finished fixing things, maybe stayed for the fight because I'm stubborn, and then left as soon as it was safe. That's what I've done for 10 years. Always moving, never staying, making everything temporary. And now?" Velara asked in a soft voice. Tyler said, "I don't want to leave now. Do you remember me asking you if you wanted me to stay? Now it's your turn to answer the same question. Do you want me to be here? Not as an Imperial Engineer, a diplomatic consultant, or any other title they want to give me. The same as Tyler. The guy who fixes things, makes awful birthday cakes, and apparently turns wheelchairs into weapons when he needs to." Valera's dragon face smiled for the first time since the fight ended. "I told you to stay weeks ago. That hasn't changed. Is stronger now if anything. Tyler, you didn't just save my life today. You made me remember what it's like to have someone really believe in me. Not the symbol, not the Empress, just me." Tyler said simply, "Then I'm staying. For as long as you want me. As long as we both want it." "And what if I want you here for the next 100 years? Velara asked, and her voice had a playful tone now, as if some of her energy had come back. Tyler chuckled. "I guess I should get used to life in the palace then. I will probably keep criticizing your maintenance rules and ignoring about half of Imperial etiquette, so be warned." "I hope so," Velara said. "I've had people who follow every rule perfectly for hundreds of years. It's not interesting. I like someone who fights with counselors and builds things that can't be built in 3 days." The next morning, they made it official in a ceremony that was much smaller than usual for diplomatic appointments. There were only Velara, Tyler, Tharn, and a few witnesses from the council. Tyler moved into the Imperial Palace for good. He had official status that let him talk about engineering and go anywhere he needed to go. But the official name didn't change all that much. Tyler still spent his mornings in the workshop, but now he had all the time and materials he needed to fix Valera's chair correctly. He added some changes to the combat, improved the power systems and mobility, but his main goal was to make it the most comfortable, reliable and useful chair ever. Velara was no longer hiding in the empty palace. She was going out in public more often. She went to council meetings in person, went to the capital city, and even hosted diplomatic meetings in places that weren't very controlled. People didn't see their empress as a distant symbol. They saw her as a real person who had fought for her throne and won against all odds. You could see that she had changed. She smiled more, talked more openly, and walked with the confidence that comes from being seen instead of controlled. Tyler saw her change from the lonely person he had met in the Hall of Eternal Flame to someone who had not only taken back her throne but also her life. They celebrated her next birthday together, exactly 1 year after Tyler had crashed into the palace service bay. This time, there were other people there, carefully chosen friends and staff members who Velara had slowly let into her life. But the best part was when they were alone in the workshop again after the official party. Tyler had made another cake, probably still bad, using food synthesizers. This time, though, he had practiced and it was at least a little bit better than the first time. "You're getting better," Velara said, taking a bite and trying not to laugh at how it tasted. "Slowly but getting better. Give me another 100 years and I might get good at it," Tyler said as he sat on a workbench next to her chair. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together like they had been for the past year. Tyler never thought his life would end up like this. He thought he would die alone in a cargo bay somewhere, like another solo pilot who never made any friends. He had found family in the last place he would have thought to look. "Hey, Tyler?" "Velara," she said suddenly, and her voice was serious enough to make him look up. "Do you ever wish you hadn't? Are you staying here? Giving up your freedom to fly anywhere you wanted?" Tyler really thought about the question. He thought about his old life, the constant switching between systems, the empty cargo holds, and the even emptier quarters. He ran away from connection for 10 years because he was afraid of failing someone again. "I wasn't free," he finally said. "I was hiding. There is a difference. Being able to fly alone didn't mean being free, it was just a very complicated way of being scared." He looked Velara straight in the eyes. "This is what I was running from, what we built together and what I have here. A place where people really care if I show up. Where I'm more than just good with a wrench. Where I can fail sometimes and it doesn't mean the end of everything." "You could never let me down," Velara said softly. Tyler gently corrected, "I could. I'm a person. I mess up. But the difference is that you won't throw me away because I made them. You'll just tell me to try again and fix it. That's what I needed. What I've needed for 10 years but couldn't say." Velara reached out and took his human hand with her clawed one, which was something they had done many times before. "Then stay. Keep fixing things that can't be fixed. Keep fighting with my council. Keep baking awful cakes that somehow taste better every time just because you tried." Tyler said, "I can do that," and squeezed her hand. "That's something I can definitely do." In the weeks that followed, they settled into routines that felt less like work and more like home. Tyler taught Dragon engineers how to think like a person when they had problems, showing them that the best answer wasn't always the most obvious one. Velara used her new confidence to push through reforms that had been put off for decades, changes she had been too alone to make before. Sometimes they fought over how to do things or what was most important. But they got through them, with two people learning how to talk to each other across centuries of experience in two very different species. It wasn't always easy. But it was real, it was important, and neither of them would give it up for anything. They sat together in the Hall of Eternal Flame one night, almost 18 months after Tyler first arrived in the Palace Bay, and watched the twin suns set. Tyler had learned a lot, and now Velara's chair was fully fixed up with the best of what he had learned. It was strong, dependable, and comfortable. Just like the person who was sitting in it. "Do you remember what you said that night?" Velara asked. "When you said you would fix my chair?" Tyler remembered saying, "You deserve equipment that works." "You did," Velara said. "But you gave me more than that. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. You gave me back who I am." Tyler's throat got tight with emotion that he still couldn't put into words. "You did the same for me. I was just as confused as you were. Just as alone. We met by chance and somehow made something that neither of us knew we needed." "Not an accident," Velara said with confidence. "Maybe fate. Perhaps luck. Maybe the universe just decided we had both been alone long enough." Tyler said, "Whatever it was, I'm thankful for it. For you. For this life that I never expected to have." As night fell and the eternal flames cast dancing shadows across the hall, they sat together. Two people from different worlds, different species, and different times. One is old and strong and the other is young and normal. They both found in each other what they had been missing. Once, the palace was empty, but now it was full of warmth and laughter. An empress who had forgotten how to be a person had remembered. A mechanic who had forgotten how to connect had finally found his way home. And together they had shown that some repairs were more important than fixing machines. Sometimes, the only way to fix something that was broken was to stay. Just caring. Simply deciding to see someone completely and love what you see. And that choice made all the difference for Tyler Hayes and Empress Velara.